Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I want you to imagine a parallel universe, which is like a universe out there where everything happens exactly the same as this one, but you do one teeny tiny thing differently, and so your life turns out super different as a result. This is called the butterfly effect. So imagine a parallel universe where somebody where you had done something different in your life, and today, instead of being a student in Seattle, you were an ice cream guy in Istanbul. Or imagine a parallel universe where somebody like a famous president, like Donald Trump, or maybe President Erdogan of Turkey, was instead known for being like a famous soccer player. It's interesting to imagine what so many prominent people could have been and how that would have affected the world. Speaking of prominent, important people, this is Abdurrahman, my brother. Abdurrahman has a passion for wrestling and boxing. In fact, 20 minutes ago, he was wrestling on the ground by the posters, ironically, subhanAllah. And he always has like a open cut on his knuckles. He probably has one right now. Anyways, in this article, I mentioned that I was looking for wrestling gyms for Abdurrahman. And it was around that time that I came across a video on YouTube where a retired boxer was saying that boxing is war. It's life or death. It's real. And so this sentiment was interesting to me because I thought of Abdurrahman. And so, I mean, really the article, Khabib and the Simulated War Phenomenon, kind of narrates a journey, this journey of discovery I went on to find the answer to this question: is boxing war? And so once again, I looked to a prominent person. In this case, it was Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib is an MMA fighter from Dagestan. Dagestan is a region, it's known for its wrestlers. In fact, it produces a disproportionately higher number of professional MMA fighters or wrestlers than any other region in the world. So they're known for their wrestlers. And this is clearly rooted in their culture. They have a culture of strict discipline, of pride and strength, and their ability to fight in honor and duty. It's incredible. I mean, you see in these wrestlers what you see in warriors. And so the question is, how is a nation of warriors that's so strong and so powerful still occupied? Dagestan has been occupied by Russia since the last century. And I want you to all to imagine something. Imagine like you imagine that parallel universe. Once I get this mic. Imagine like you imagine those parallel universes. This is Khabib, young man from Dagestan. Imagine if all the young men in Dagestan, all of the Khabibs, decided to harness their warriorness, the fighter in them, and resist against the Russian occupation, free their land. Do you think they could do it? I think they could. And that's exactly the threat. Tyrants around the world, so oppressors around the world, understand the threat of this potential power. That there's this fighting power that is among the men of the masses. So I'm thinking about all this, and it's probably my finals week. That's probably why I'm thinking about it, because I get super creative during my finals week. But anyways, I'm thinking about this, and a theory is born in my head. That professional combat sports, like boxing, like wrestling, the professional combat sports, are created and supported by people in power to neutralize the threat of fighting energy in the masses. So you have these people who have this fighting energy and its potential power. So what people in power want to do to neutralize this threat is they want to facilitate the release of this energy into a vacuum that's going to absorb all this and deflect it away from the corrupt rulers, the people in power. They want to make sure that to keep men from fighting and resisting against corrupt rulers, there's a simulated war environment for them to fight in and fulfill this drive, release this energy against each other instead of against corrupt governments. So they sign them into professional combat sports. Khabib is one of the best fighters in Dagestan. Khabib could harness the warrior in him and wage war against Vladimir Putin, who was his oppressor, his occupier. But unfortunately, Khabib, the fighter, was neutralized. They signed him to a professional sports organization, the UFC, and instead of real enemies, he fought other men just like him, other athletes, and then he would fight them for game and then get up and fly back after his games to the Russian Republic of Dagestan and receive a congratulations phone call and a cup of tea from his occupier, Putin. So if boxing and if wrestling and boxing and MMA was in fact more Khabib maybe Paul has a kind heart, maybe he likes to party with just friends. When those in pressing are releasing their fighting energy against other civilians, not against them.
Был в личном качестве. Не за стороной уже выступал, но в личном качестве выступал. Но все-таки гражданин России нам не безразлично, как
the mainstream media. This is an article titled How Dagestan is Raising the Next Generation of MMA Champions in the Wrestling Room. And so now obviously I want you to be aware the region of Dagestan in Chechnya has a history of resisting against occupation and invasion of their land. Russia has occupied them for a long time, and they have a history of resisting against it. And what does the trusted media call any type of resistance against occupation? Terrorism, correct. So let's read that with this knowledge. It says that wrestling has served another purpose in Dagestan, and that's keeping the kids there occupied with an activity after the country was called the most dangerous place in Europe back in 2011 due to constant terrorist attacks. Over here, now several years later, terrorism has largely been stamped out in Dagestan, but reminders are hanging on the walls in many of the wrestling clubs as children are encouraged to embrace athletics rather than fanaticism. Dagestan has a history of terrorism. It's a history they're not proud of, but when you're talking to the kids, they don't care about none of that. They just want to wrestle. They just want to be the best. They just want to be champions. So this is incredible. They blatantly told us the exact purpose behind professional wrestling in Dagestan. It's to keep kids occupied, distracted. They're telling us that professional wrestling is a distraction, it's an occupation. And that kids nowadays, they're bragging how they don't care about none of that, none of the real freedom fighting in the nation that Dagestan used to be known for. So they had looked to a region, one of the strongest regions of Muslims in the world, and saw that they're eager to fight for their freedom, and so they created this simulated war for them to fight in with no real life effect. By the way, the simulated war tactic is not new, and it's not only used on Muslims. Think back in history. This is the Colosseum. The Colosseum, I did some research on this, and apparently it was built by a Roman emperor as a gift to the people of Rome who were unhappy after the disastrous reign of the previous emperor. So the Colosseum is really the exact definition of a war simulation. Hundreds of thousands of men fought to the death against fake opponents, literally animals, for other men, and everybody would come from all over to watch these, and then the people who won were warriors and heroes, and the people who lost were literally dead. And so maybe it was a gift for the people of Rome, or maybe it was an effort to neutralize the unhappy, angry, military-age men of Rome and busy them in a war simulation to keep them from occupying. Maybe. Remember when I told you to imagine a parallel universe where Erdogan was a professional soccer player instead of a professional president? By the way, Erdogan almost was. Turkish elections. Imagine if Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, which was the secularist, racist, anti-Muslim candidate, and he's running to be president of Turkey. Such a high stakes election. And Erdogan, instead of fighting him at the polls, at the voting polls, was busy training on a soccer field. What an interesting parallel universe. Imagine the state of the Ummah. This is actually, people are imagining. This is on a website called alternatehistory.com, and this was a forum where they were talking about how Recep Tayyip Erdogan was almost a professional soccer player. And so somebody was saying, what if he had decided to shave his beard and go pro? Could Turkey have won the FIFA World Cup? And somebody responded and said, while we're at it, how does Turkish politics change with Erdogan as a footballer? How does Turkish politics change with Erdogan busy in a simulated war? I wonder how it would. Imagine one last parallel universe. Imagine when our brother...
Где-то 3 месяца назад. 4.
He just beginning with Quran like 4 months ago. Now we're gonna check him. Давай,
taught them
мы
the
сейчас
history of the
будем тебя проверять, как ты Коран читаешь. Только знаешь, что тебя камера снимает. Давай, пошел.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna a'toynaka al-kawthar fasalli lirabbika.
Finally back to Abdurrahman. Do I still want to enroll him in a wrestling gym? Yes, I do. I do want to enroll him in a wrestling gym. The physical training is real. The mindset training is real. The wrestling is real. But it's the professional career that is not. I completely believe that we should train, learn to fight. I want Muslim boys to do all the training that Khabib did growing up and adopt the strength, the discipline of Dagestan. And when it comes to wrestling, even the Salaf say that, or Imam Ibn al-Qayyim says that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ would wrestle. There's at least one narration of the Prophet ﷺ himself wrestling. There's no harm in this type of practice and training. You could even consider it a historical Muslim tradition. The harm is when we invest our youth in professional career sports, in simulation. The harm is ending up fighting a fake war. So are professional boxers and wrestlers and MMA fighters warriors? The answer is yes. These people are warriors, but what they're fighting is not war. It's a delusion of it. The boxer who had come up on the YouTube feed on my little app was wrong. Boxing is not war. Boxing is not life or death. So I pray that our sons as boys invest in training, stronger, discipline, their brothers, and I pray that as men, our sons engage in
MC, get back to the questions.
Anyone have any questions?
You know Myrna?
Huh?
Myrna, the girl. She went inside the store, she broke in and they're stealing chips.
If you shouldn't
The girls
involve yourself in
stole chips, ice
simulation,
cream. Maran.
Huh?
Myrna and
if you shouldn't involve yourself in simulations of war, then how will you become ready to actually fight in?
That's a very good question. So when I say simulation of war, I don't define the training as a simulation. I would define a simulated war or the harmful simulated war is where it becomes your professional career. You're investing your entire self into it, and so it's kind of a distraction. You're being occupied fighting a simulated war, and you think this is real war. You think this is life or death or whatever it is. So I do believe that we should involve ourselves in simulated war in the sense of fighting with our brothers, training, the full training, whatever that was, whatever that constitutes in Dagestan, whatever it is. But when it comes to fighting as your career, where you're supposed to be doing your actual fight for the real world, then we should avoid simulation in that sense.
So what do you have to say to the people that say, if we had more Muslims in soccer leagues and professional sports leagues, and they won like a lot of matches or whatnot, that would give more like da'wah to Islam and quote unquote more victory to Islam. What are your thoughts on that?
I say that on the short term, if you're talking about da'wah, where a few people might see their akhlaq, see their good manners and become Muslim, that's true. But when it comes to ummah scale dignity, where the ummah will be freed, if a few people become Muslim, that's incredible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide everybody to become Muslim. But if you want to free our nations and revive this ummah on a political scale, on a worldwide global scale, where we're not slaves to the West, where we're not slaves to anybody, then this is kind of counterproductive, it's detrimental, because the people who are going to be doing that freeing of the ummah are too busy fighting in the simulation.
I just want to augment to your response, sister. Look at what the impact was, the dawah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was just doing the dawah as an individual, he got about 63 to 85 people in the period of 10, 13 years in Mecca. But when he was able to establish a state and move the Muslim as a state, as an ummah, then the impact was not onesies and twosies of the people embracing Islam, but the nations and tribes and the entire communities embracing Islam. So inshallah, once we do that and move as an ummah under the flagship of Khilafah, inshallah Rabbul Alameen, the difference is going to be much huge. And yes, once we have a Khilafah, we will continue to have people playing sports, inshallah Rabbul Alameen, and they will continue to be the inspiration for the people and all the people who are not on Islam. I do have a question. So do we think that secularism is the solution for the Muslims?
No.
Jazakumullah khair. Wallah, it's an amazing article. Wallah, when I read this article, I liked this article so much, mashallah. And really, for our all young men, for all the Tamkeen boys, please make sure you read this article. Please make sure you do not waste your time in a simulated war. I know all oppressors, all oppressing regimes, they try to get the people busy in soccer games. They just, make a simulated war in soccer games. Let the young men like you waste all their energy in soccer. Let them scream and yell and get all the energy in soccer. This is why, Shabab, whenever it was the World Cup in Morocco, I kept telling you, Ahmed, please do not watch this. I am all for you to play sports so that you become healthy, but do not sit down and keep watching some people who are playing against each other. Get out of this simulated war. And my opinion, Ridwan, whenever we are a Muslim ummah, we do not have to follow the West. Why do we have to have professional soccer players? If you make me the Khalifa of the Ummah, I will encourage recreational sport, but I will ban sports as a career. We don't want to be the best soccer players. We don't want to be the best runners. We don't want to compete for those championships. We do not have to follow the West. We need to be the best doctors, engineers, whatever career you are in, but do something useful. It is shame that what you are doing for your life is just running after the soccer ball. It is very shameful that your impact in life is to run after a soccer ball. I see some people saying, I want to be the fastest runner in the Olympics. So what? What is gonna change if you are the fastest runner? Do not waste your time. Do not say, I'm going to be an influencer. You can be I know, I read your mind, Ridwan. You can be an influencer if you are doing something useful. But if you are influencer by running after a ball, you are a useless influencer.
All right, before we get to the discussion, for the discussion for everybody on Padlet, we actually have one more question for Noor. Two more questions on the girls' side.
Assalamualaikum. I just wanted to ask about, so what advice do you give to the young men of this generation? Like, where do you think that they should start? I mean, Sheikh kind of answered that question a little bit, but I mean, if like a young boy is growing up, do you think that they should start, having this, feel for like jihad, at a fast rate, or do you think it should start with like slow things, like maybe like, I don't know, writing articles like this or like something like that? Or do you think that maybe, do you think that they should go at a fast rate where they're just like, training, I guess, or like, that's my question.
I would say, as a sister and as I think I would say that the point that we want to instill in our youth is that you want them to work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that depends on what is at hand, the situation that you're in. Sometimes we get very excited, we want to make big changes. But really, if your goal is to do a certain thing, for example, I want to be a fighter, or I want to be I want to lead a youth group. But say you don't have the opportunity to lead a youth group, or you don't have the opportunity to be a fighter or anything like that. But if your goal is, I want to work for the sake of Allah, then whatever opportunity arises, you will be content with it and you will take it and you will work on it. So I think we need to instill in our youth that your goal is to work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you. If that is what we instill in our youth, and then give them the resources of Quran and of attending halaqas and of strengthening their bodies, their mind, their soul, then inshallah that's what you want to instill there. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair, ya Noor, for such an amazing article. I just have a reflection, not a question, don't worry. Subhanallah, Subhanallah, a few days ago in Egypt we have an Egyptian soldier which killed on the borders of Egypt fighting the Israeli soldiers. His name is Muhammad Salah. Subhanallah, when I heard his name, I felt that there is a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that his name is Muhammad Salah. Maybe we have to see the real champion in our ummah. Not every Muhammad Salah is a champion. Yeah, I'm not saying, subhanallah, I'm not saying anything about Muhammad Salah. Of course, we know that we have another Muhammad Salah, the famous soccer player. But subhanallah, as you said, the real champions is in the battle of war, who died, subhanallah, as a shaheed. Subhanallah, it stopped me when I heard your article. Subhanallah, it comes to my mind. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah khairan for the sisters and brothers' questions. So we have another question, but this time from the peer review panel. And the question is, so the subject of this article is young boys, young men, but why should the woman care? What's the woman's position in this?
That's a very good question, and it's very important because I'm a woman. She, her. Women should definitely care, and the reason, actually, I wouldn't have never written this article if it wasn't for Abdurrahman, subhanallah, my brother. He obviously is into wrestling, and so I'm looking for gyms, and then when you're looking for these wrestling gyms on your phone, YouTube gets the hint, and they start giving you the suggestions, and then I saw that video, and then that's where this article came from. So we should care because we're sisters, because we're going to be mothers, inshallah, because we're wives, because grandmothers. We care because we're the ones who are going to be raising, subhanallah, these young boys, and these are values that you have to instill in them from their youth. They say that the woman is half the ummah and she raises the other half of the ummah, so the woman is the ummah. So when it comes to these ummah topics, you have to be, subhanAllah, as a woman, you have to be very knowledgeable about this, and you have to be aware about these things. You're instilling these in the youth. And these professional athletes, they become professional athletes by working on this from their youth. Like, none of them were, at 15, 16, 17, they started playing soccer. They've been playing soccer since they were 3 years old. So their parents had a big role in them becoming professional athletes, professional wrestlers, whatever it is. So as mothers and as sisters and as people who have these men in our lives or these young boys, future men, inshallah, who we have a task of raising, we have to be knowledgeable about this so that we can instill this in them and it can inform our raising of them.